We want to go in and see how simple it is to look at the ladder status within Step 7. We open Somatic Manager by clicking the desktop icon. Then there are actually two ways we can go in and see the status of a ladder program in the PLC. We can either go through a project, or first we're going to go through accessible nodes again, where we just go out and look and see what's on the network, go right into one of those PLCs that are identified on the network and look straight at the program. If we open our accessible nodes, we see the one we have our direct connect to with the communication cable is MPI address 2. So we need to expand our view on the left side here and look at what's below that accessible nodes folder. We can click View, Show All Levels, and that will open all the folders that are below the accessible nodes folder there in the window. It takes a couple of seconds to do that because it's actually having to go read that information off the network from the PLCs. If we click on the blocks on MPI address 2 PLC, then from the button bar we'll pick the details view to get some more information about things. We see we have an organization block 1, OB1. That is an organization block, and it's written in the ladder language. So that's the one we want to look at. We also have several blocks that are SFBs and SFCs. Those are the ones that are in firmware instructions that are available right in the PLC. We don't need to look at that. We just want to look at our organization block that we've programmed. We'll get this message because since there's no project open, there are no symbol names or no documentation to go along with that ladder program. We open on into the view here in accessible nodes, and you see we have I's for inputs, Q's for outputs, and M's for our internal memory bits or control relays. So I's, Q's, and M's are all we're going to see here. We're not going to see any symbolic names. If we click the monitor button or the eyeglasses up on the toolbar, you see we're going to show power flow up to the contacts that are open and then no power on out to the output because we haven't closed any of the contacts yet. We can go through and toggle the switch that's connected to input 0.0 and we see we get our output turning on. If we go to our operator interface and toggle the memory bit M0.0, it also turns on. Or we can come right here on the screen, right click on any element like M0.0. We'll get a pop-up menu that lets us modify that value to a 1 or turn it on. You see there we get an output. If we right click again, modify to 0, that toggles that bit back off and turns off the output. So we have a way of right there on the screen controlling that. If we try to do that with a physical output that's wired to a module, see we turn that modify to 1, it doesn't actually work because the module itself is going to overwrite immediately the value we put in there. So it has to be something that's not being physically controlled by an input module. Okay, something we have to really watch while we're looking at status is where you click on the screen because that really affects what you see as far as status. If we click down here on Network 3, you see we're getting status on Network 3 and 4, but Network 1 and 2 don't really show anything. They're still being executed. If we click down at Network 4, now Network 3 does not show status. All you see in status is from where you click on the screen, from that network down. The ones above, you will not see the status. They're still being executed. Those outputs are still coming on and off. We just don't see the status. And we do that to improve the update of the screen because you can pick and choose what you want to see updated. But you have to remember that if I click on Network 2, only the rungs below that work, and the ones above, you do not see the status, even though they are still executing. Also, you can click in the middle of a rung. Here we don't see the inputs changing, but as we toggle those, we can see the output change, come on and off, but you don't see the inputs changing at all because we have not selected to look at status back there. If you click at the very beginning of the rung or up on the network number, Network 2, Now we see the entire rung showing status. If we go back and click at Network 1, we see the entire screen. As we work our way down, we're not seeing the status on the upper rungs. Go back to Network 1, now you see it. So the best thing there is to always come in and click at the network name. If we want to change the color that we're looking at there, we can customize Step 7 several ways. If we click Options, Customize, Ladder FBD, Function Block Diagram, we can choose from the list what we want to change the color of. In this case, we're looking at what we have when we have true status or power flow. We can click Select, and then select that little bright magenta there to the right. That ought to really show up. Say OK. OK again. And now you see what was green has now gone to the purple or magenta color. See that toggle on as we change our input status. If we decide that maybe wasn't the best choice, we can go back to Options, Customize, Ladder Function Block Diagram tab, hit Select again, and go back to our original green. We can also select Thin, Medium, or Thick for the width of the line that's colored in when you see status on the screen. On some displays, you have to go to a thicker line to really make it show up well. So now we're back to our original green. If we turn on some inputs, we'll see those status go right on through with the green color. If we click our monitor tool button again, the eyeglasses, turn off our monitor, our status, then we can close the online view and close our accessible nodes. Now we want to go open a project and see what else we get extra when we use that. We can go File, Open. You get a list that shows all the projects that are stored on the hard drive. Go down and pick the one that I know matches the program we've got loaded in the PLC. Then we also want to open everything that's under that project folder. We can do like before and say View, Show All Levels, or we can click the pluses or minus boxes there to the left of every level and open and close different levels. Or we can use another Windows shortcut where we press the key that has the star or asterisk on it on the numeric keypad, and that'll open all the levels at once, just like doing Show All Levels. From blocks, we'll click our Detail button on the toolbar and get some information there about OB1. We have a symbolic name now that we added. And no, we don't have the SFCs and SFBs like we did in accessible nodes. That's because those are in firmware in the PLC. They're built-in instructions. We don't have to have those in our offline view that's stored on disk. All we need is the OB1, that in this case, for our ladder program. So we double-click on OB1, opens our ladder editor. You see we get a lot more information this time. We've got comments and network comments and symbolic names. We still have the I's, M's, and Q's for the hard-code addresses, but they have symbolic names with them. And in some cases, we've even put in comments about the individual elements. If we want to change that and make it look a little more like accessible nodes, you can click the tag button bar up there, and you see it went back to I's, M's, and Q's. We still have the information box down below that shows the symbolic names that go with them, or we can point at any element in the ladder, and you see we get a pop-up tooltip that gives us the hard-code address, the symbolic name, followed by a comment if we've entered one in the symbol table. So we can very easily see both the symbolic name and the hard-code address. From Options Symbol Table, we're going to open this symbol table that the programmer set up when he wrote this program. You see we have some comments in there on some of the symbol names. If we click on any column heading like symbol, it's going to sort the information and put it in alphabetic order in the symbol. If you click on address, it'll put the addresses in numeric order. If you click in data type, it will put everything sorted by data type. If we go back to address, again, we get everything back in numeric order by address element. We can close that symbol table now that we've seen where all this information is coming from, turn it back on by using the button bar, We see we have our names again, and we point at them and get the hard code address. Now, if we want to change the way the screen looks, another thing we can customize is the width of the address field. If we run that down and manage to get it back down to 10, notice how the symbol names now wrap around. They're only 10 characters long before they wrap. It's made the rung itself much narrower on the screen. It doesn't take up as much room, but it's a little hard to read. So we can go back to Customize, Ladder, Function Block, change that to 24 again, bring it back in, and now we have our nice long names on one line, but the rung did get wider on the screen. So you can balance that to fit what you need to see. If we click our eyeglass monitor button again, we'll go right into ladder status here in our project view. We can right click on any element again, say modify to a 1, switch it back on just like we did through accessible nodes, modify it back to a 0, and we're back off. Now you notice, because of where we click, that first input's not showing status again. If we go back and click on network 1, it all starts working. If we click down at network 2, all we see is from 2 down. So again, we've got to be very, very careful about where you click while you're looking at status. If you go down here and click at network 4, that's the only network that's going to show status. We scroll back down there and do it again with it showing a little better. If you click on network 4, we see status on 4, but not on anything above that. But step 7 won't trap you there. If you scroll where there are no rungs on the screen that are showing status, it realizes that and kicks it back on up above where you can see it. But if we do click down at network 3, you see that 1 and 2 do not work or do not show status, even though they are actually still executing there in the program. Click back at network 1, at the top of the screen, and there you see it all. Okay, we've kicked the PLC into stop mode with the key switch just to show how that turns red at the bottom. Now it's back in run. You see the little update status bar running across the screen there in green, showing that things are updating. So now we are back in status. We can turn off our monitor by using the toolbar button. We can close the ladder editor, close our project. We're through with it now. Close step 7, and you see how easy it was to go in either with or without the project. Just walked up with accessible nodes and saw the program, or used the project to look at the documentation.